And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Thursday, February 2nd. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com. And here are some of the news stories for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. Claire Nomi, the first woman to lead southeastern Montana's Crow tribe, has passed on. She was 73 years old. Nomi's former executive assistant, Arlo Dawes, says Nomi passed January 31st at St. Vincent's Hospital in Billings. He says he did not know the cause of death. Nomi was tribal chairwoman from 1990 to 2000, serving what Dawes said was an unprecedented 5 terms. However, her tenure was marred by a 1998 conviction of felony theft for using her influence to buy tribal lands for a fraction of what it was worth. She was sentenced to 6 months of home detention in order to pay $21,000. She resisted efforts to remove her from office and was defeated at the polls in 2000 by Clifford Birding Ground. Peruvian authorities say they're struggling to keep outsiders away from a clan of previously isolated Amazon Indians who began appearing on the banks of a jungle river popular with environmental tourists last year. The behavior of the small group of Mushko Puro Indians has puzzled scientists who say it may be related to the encroachment of loggers and by low-flying aircraft from nearby natural gas and oil exploration in the southeastern region of the country. Clan members have been blamed for 2 bow and arrow attacks on people near the riverbank in Madre de Dios state, where officials say the Indians were first seen last May. One badly wounded a forest ranger in October. The following month, another fatality pierced the heart of a local indigenous member of another tribe, Nicholas Flores, who had long maintained a relationship with them. The advocacy group Survival International released photos this week showing clan members on the riverbank, describing the pictures as the most detailed sightings of uncontacted Indians ever recorded on a camera. The Navajo Nation Council has confirmed the appointment of Clara Pratt to lead the tribe's Washington, D.C. office. The vote during the council's winter session in Window Rock was unanimous. Pratt has been serving in the position since March of 2011, but needed the council's blessing in her appointment to continue. The Lupton native previously worked for the U.S. Small Business Administration, leading its Office of Native American Affairs. And today we go to Navajo Times correspondent Marley Shebala for a short conversation about some of the events that they're covering at the Navajo Times for the Navajo Nation. Marley Shebala, thank you for joining with us today on the Native News Update and giving us a little bit of information about what's happening way out your way from us here in Window Rock, Arizona. Can you give us an update on what the Navajo Times is looking at nowadays?
Well, like to say Yate to everyone, and thank you for inviting me on again. And the Navajo Nation government has currently, and has been, I guess, maybe for a couple of years now, dealing with federal contract problems. I'm sure that many of your readers, listeners, viewers have heard about the issues regarding Head Start. Back in 2006, the tribe lost its contract and put hundreds of people out of work, Head Start workers, and thousands of preschool students into the streets.
Indeed.
Well, Head Start continues to have questions regarding compliance of their policies and procedures with the Navajo Nation. And so the Navajo Nation is dealing with that. And recently, in today's front page story, we also are, the Navajo government is now dealing with a contract for law enforcement. And, you know, under the treaty, most of the tribes have their law enforcement under contract, or if not, then they have their law enforcement through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. But
Right.
either way, the Bureau of Indian Affairs is involved. And recently, the Navajo Division of Public Safety has come under some tough scrutiny, especially the political appointee, John Billison. And he was appointed by President Shelley.
We left off before we froze up, Marley, with you telling us that this law enforcement person was appointed by Shelley, and that there was issues with the law enforcement funding. Tell us, our watchers here today, the size of the Navajo Nation, and you have not only BIA and contractual services, but cross services with several jurisdictions on the reservation there, don't you? I mean, all 4 states and several counties.
Oh yeah, the reservation is about 27,000 square miles, and the majority of it is in northern Arizona, and then a portion in New Mexico, and also up into Utah, and a little bit into Colorado. And for the viewers, the Navajo Nation president politically appoints the heads of all the divisions. And with the issues concerning Head Start and how it was handled, and now you have the Public Safety Division under scrutiny by the BIA over the qualifications of top commanders, the council has started to talk about whether or not they should seriously consider removing political appointments and replacing with contracts, putting someone under contract and dealing with their performance. And because on the Navajo Nation, and I think with other tribes, all their police services are completely funded, federally funded. And if you don't meet certain guidelines, they can pull your contract, which is what happened with Head Start. Now, if they pull the contract for police services, is that more serious? I think so, because you have law enforcement who deal with life and safety, life and death. And what has happened is that, and they pointed to a couple of stories that the Navajo Times did. And we found out that the Division of Public Safety director had a protection order issued against him by Maricopa County Court.
I see.
And yeah, and there were very serious charges, and it was renewed from 2002 to 2004. And then we also uncovered that some of his top commanders, who he had thought about promoting, also had backgrounds dealing with domestic violence, and that was pretty much that was covered up. And then, now there's an investigation of the Division of Public Safety director for allegedly pulling out his service weapon against a retired police officer.
Okay.
And so
are these people all appointees, or only some of them at that top level? In other words, if a Navajo Nation president wanted to appoint you, you may not necessarily have the experience in law enforcement, but he could do that. But there would be people who are looking at those qualifications who control the contractual money from the BIA who might object to that. Is that essentially what we're dealing with?
Yeah, that's essentially what's happening within the Division of Public Safety. And with the Division of Public Safety and law enforcement, they have to have certification to be carrying a gun. And under those standards, which come from Arizona and also from the federal government, anyone who has a protection order issued against them or is convicted of domestic violence cannot carry a service weapon. And I've talked with Arizona police standards officers and commissioners, directors, and they've all said individuals are more likely to become very violent with citizens.
Indeed.
And they're supposed to deal with the protection of citizens. And also, you have it in the country, this huge concern for violence against Native women. I mean, the statistics for rape and domestic violence against Native women is so much higher than anywhere else. It's a crisis, and it's deadly.
Gotcha. Well, it's a concern throughout the country. And the federal government has been trying to fight it for some time with additional funding and law enforcement officials. So it's something going on all over the world. We only got about a minute left before I have to take off. But can you give us some really good news? You guys are always you guys, Navajos, are always involved in sports and breaking all kinds of records and all that. You guys and gals, by the way. Tell us a little bit of what's going on there with winter sports and what's happening. Can you tell me something about that?
Well, this is a winter sport. I mean, it's a real Navajo winter sport. It's called the shoe game, Keshche. And it's being used to help a local school, a very small one. It's called Noshchiti. And it's in the New Mexico portion of the Navajo Reservation. And they're using it to bring up their scores dealing with No Child Left Behind, that federal law, because that game, it was used initially by the animals to decide, the sacred animals to decide whether there was going to be all day or there was going to be all night. And they got together and they had this shoe game. And but it also teaches math, and it teaches understanding and analysis. And so they're bringing it back into the school.
And the school she was talking about before the feed froze up was Nashita Elementary School, where students were scoring low in the No Child Left Behind programs until they introduced some cultural and tribally significant traditional teachings into the curriculum to hopefully improve those scores. And that's going to be another roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. Thanks for joining with us, and come back again soon.